Hello, online pipe community. Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here. Today we have some more morsels for mental manducation. But first, in a Briarly bent billiard brandy, not quite sure exactly which shape you'd categorize this as, I'm smoking some Drucker & Sons Blair Gowrie. Good stuff. Nice Scottish blend. Yeah, tasty. It's a nice little pipe. Well, we knew it had to happen sooner or later. YouTube took down the video that I posted 2 weeks ago today for violating the portion of its community standards related to presenting medical misinformation. Specifically, information making claims that contradict the World Health Organization or local medical authorities. When I contacted them to request clarification, of course, I received no response. Of the 3 items that I presented 2 weeks ago, one of them was from the CDC, who is our local medical authority, so I assume that one wasn't the problem. But the other 2 were from Israel, and the second one included Spain and Australia. So I can only assume that YouTube doesn't think that your medical experts, even though the studies are peer-reviewed, know what they're talking about. That's all that I can assume. That isn't an opinion held by me. But moving forward, I would guess I will only be able to quote CDC's own numbers and studies. And that's all right, because they provide plenty of information that they don't talk about publicly. So we'll get back to it. At any rate, I got my first warning. No surprise. Inflation hit 9% over the last couple of months. Biden has done in his first year what the previous worst president in American history, Jimmy Carter, took his full term to do. Handing off a 9% inflation number on Reagan's inauguration 40 plus years ago. Gotta love it. 2 related items here. Last weekend in Indiana, a killer opened fire in the food court of a shopping mall. Killed 3, injured 2. Fortunately for the other shoppers, there was an alert and ready 22-year-old man carrying a concealed firearm. That man engaged the shooter from 40 yards away, hit him with the first round, hit him with a total of 8 out of 10 before the murderer stopped trying to advance. That young man is a hero. Now, you have probably heard people on the left screeching that he wasn't supposed to be in the mall with a firearm, that it was illegal. Well, no, it wasn't. And you can fact check me on this just by going and looking up Indiana state law. Indiana state law does not make it a crime to carry a firearm into public places, even when they are marked no firearms. It does make it a crime to remain on the premises if you have been asked to leave. That law will differ state to state. You make sure that you know what your local laws are, but this young man, he was not breaking any law in Indiana. Now, personally, if I see a place that's posted, I simply don't go there, whether I'm carrying or not. They don't get my business. But the police congratulated this young man and said quite bluntly and correctly that there would be a lot more people dead and injured if he had not been there and been willing to stand up and protect them. Contrary to what you may have heard, the first reports that came out said that he ended the murderer's rampage within 2 minutes. The police, when they put the timeline together, said no, it was more like 15 seconds. This young man, in 15 seconds, did what Uvalde police officers did not do in well over an hour. You really want to wait for police officers when you can't be guaranteed that they'll actually do anything? I don't. I would rather be able to take care of myself. In a similar circumstance, St. Charles, Missouri, same weekend, an armed robber held a knife to the throat of a gas station clerk. An alert customer noticed this, managed to draw the thief's attention. When the thief began to advance on him with the knife, this customer drew his legally carried concealed firearm, shot and killed him, stopping the threat to both of their lives. Folks, this is not vigilantism. This is not some kind of justice gone bad or the wild, wild west. This is what should happen when innocent people are attacked by violent criminals who have no real regard for life. Last item today, a little more philosophical item. Had an interesting back and forth this weekend in a comment thread. One of the things that came up and came to mind was the idea of what exactly is government control of something, or when is it that government is making the decisions? Many countries, our own included, have a convenient legal fiction that certain entities are independent of the government. To use our example, the U.S. Postal Service, since 1970, has been an off-budget entity, meaning it does not receive direct funding from taxpayers. Notice I use the word direct, because over the years, the many times that the U.S. Postal Service has failed to meet its financial obligations, including operational and pension funding, Congress has quietly slipped billions of dollars into continuing resolutions and appropriations acts that have bailed the Postal Service out numerous times. In addition, various estimates from think tanks that are all over the political spectrum put the state guaranteed, the government guaranteed monopoly of the Postal Service at anywhere from $10 to $15 billion advantage a year. For those of you who don't know, the U.S. Postal Service in the United States is the only entity that is allowed to use boxes marked U.S. mail. Further, no carrier is allowed to provide letter service at a lower cost than the post office, so they don't do it. See, if they were allowed to do that, they would be able to put the post office completely out of business, the way they have come close to doing in package services. It's that monopoly that is worth billions of dollars a year to the Postal Service, and that still means our Postal Service is government controlled. Like it or not, it is. So even though Congress is not making the decisions that run the post office, Congress still has a large amount of control, and we still pay for it. And it still sucks. So that is a convenient legal fiction that it is truly an independent entity. Another probably more controversial type example, sticking with the US government. And this was one that I was against back when it happened. The last President Bush in Iraq employed private contracted security companies, mercenaries. They weren't allowed to engage formally in combat. They were only allowed to provide what they called security within the cities. Now, when those companies engaged in what was later to be determined to be criminal activity, did anybody around the world not say, look what America did? And rightfully so, because America paid for it. America directed it. The government, the Army, Department of Defense could all say, oh, well, we hired them, but they are a private entity separate from us. Yes, but you gave them a mission and you paid them to do it. You are responsible for how they performed that mission, regardless of whether you actually gave the commands, the orders, or the control. You paid for it, you're responsible for it. Just a little something to consider when you look around at things that your government pays for. Anything that taxpayers pay for through the government and the taxpayers are accountable for. You may disagree. Feel free. Just my 2 cents. And with that, I'm going to go inside. The heat, the humidity here, not making for a pleasant smoke. Maybe my wife will be nice and let me finish this Blair Gallery up there in my office. Y'all, light something you like. Streaker and Son stuff is pretty good. Enjoy your afternoon.